right, so welcome back, world, and our 60 subscribers. This is episode number 6 of the Tragic Podcast. Marcus, I'm keeping track of all the subscribers, man. I be going onto the YouTube to check out the numbers to see if they go up every day. Yeah. Every now and then I'll see like 2 or 3 new ones, and I get excited. I'm like, okay, we on top of it. My guest today, Marcus Osborne, Bay Area, figure, longtime radio personality in the Bay Area, radio, just TV, overall good dude. All that stuff, welcome, man. Thank you for coming through and hanging out with us.
Man, I love doing podcasts. I love talking about stuff.
Yeah. You know what? I was really happy that because when I texted you about this and you said, I love doing podcasts, I don't think people understand, like, you don't hear that enough. You know what I mean? Well, especially amongst comics, we were just talking about comics. A lot of comics will down talk podcasting. Why? I don't know. I mean, they basically, what you do on stage is basically a one-person podcast when you're up there telling jokes. You know what I mean? So I never understood. I think it's just like the cool thing to do to like talk bad about, it's podcasting. Like everybody's got a podcast, but not everybody's got, a podcast like this where we actually get a chance to chop it up.
Send it to Joe Rogan. Fuck podcast. Oh, Rogan called?
Okay, well, I'll be right there. Yeah, see, I'm just trying to get to that level when motherfuckers want to come see me on the Tragic Podcast. Yeah. So the reason I invited you today, man, is because, not only are we good friends and we always have good conversation and whatnot, but, this is what the podcast is about bringing on storytellers. And when I brought it to your attention, when I asked you if you wanted to come on, I just had this feeling that you would have something of substance to offer, because you always do every time we get a chance to chop it up. So you told me, you kind of gave me an overview of what your story was about. We're talking about a certain time in your life, a rough patch in your life, and we're going all the way back as far as 2007, correct?
Yeah.
So take us there, man. Tell me your tragic tale.
I mean, honestly, this was difficult for me because I actually said I'll send you a story or two.
Yeah.
Because especially at this age, you've gone through some stuff. But one of the things I mentioned when I was telling you about is I always feel like each and every individual has gone through points in their life, just certain periods. And I always try to break them into three-year periods. There's like these periods where you experience very personal growth. And this particular one, I feel like this is the one that kind of catapulted me into where I am from a perspective level now as an adult, as a middle-aged person now. It always made me feel like I grew up during that period.
Yeah.
Now, and I was already mid-30s at this time, 2007. But I had already been in radio since starting in radio in 93.
And what station did you start at officially at?
KNBR 68, the sports leader.
Yeah.
And I was there when Gary Radnich was there, and Pete Franklin was there, and Bob Fitzgerald was there.
Right.
So it was a while back.
That's one thing that we actually have in common, is that we've worked at a lot of the same stations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's not, when you really take a step back when it comes to Bay Area radio, there's not too many guys like us that can honestly say, like, no, we've actually touched a lot of the big stations and the big shows. KNBR, The Game, Alice, the time that we spent with Alice.
Different formats too.
KBLX, where we both been at KBLX. So
Country.
Now that's the one I haven't had a chance to dive into.
Country.
Yeah. What's that? I mean, were you even a country fan?
Yeah. Okay. So here's how I ended up at the country station. So I'm not, as I said, I'm not a gigantic country music fan, but I did grow up as a kid from the 80s.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot. I knew who a lot of the players were in country music. I still kind of followed it. I'm a big pop culture nut, so I know who all the big players are. I know who all the big names are, et cetera, et cetera. So I figured as long as I wasn't placed in a position where I had to like answer all the heavy country trivia, it's still music.
Right.
It's still just me getting online, looking up who's who. But I knew who the big names were at the time, Tim McGraw, et cetera. So it wasn't that difficult.
Everybody who says that they love music, it's always like country is always like the one where it's like, everything. Well, I don't really listen to country though.
You know what I say to those people? You don't really love music.
You don't really love, exactly. Or just say you like, say what you like.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I like R&B and hip hop.
Yeah. That's fair.
That's what I like.
Like when somebody says to me, "Oh, I love music," do you know?
Right.
Do you know? You listen to classical, like I will listen. Rudy, if you say to me, "Listen to this song," just like movies and TV.
Yeah.
if you just say listen to this or watch this, I will sit down, listen to it, watch it.
Yeah.
And then I'll make a judgment for there. If you ever check out one of my playlists, it's filled with a bunch of different kinds of things because I really do truly love music.
Yeah.
I used to say to my homegirl Charlene, like, nah, people say they love music, but they
don't
just
really,
love their music.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a completely
They
different
like 2 or 3
thing.
different genres.
Yeah.
They get into ska for like a month, and then they're like, man, I'm eclectic. I got eclectic taste.
I also think that's attributable to the fact that being a child of the 80s and growing up in the 70s and 80s, radio back then was different because you could turn on a radio station, a true top 40 station, and that station would play Eddie Rabbitt, and then they would play Dolly Parton or Kenny Rogers, but they'd also play Aerosmith and Queen, and they would also play Michael Jackson. They'd play Prince. They would play, Al Green. These like legitimate top 40 stations would play almost anything. So as a kid growing up listening to that station or those kinds of stations, you kind of learn to enjoy all styles and all genres of music. What happened with FM radio, when FM radio really blew up in the 80s, the bigger it got, the easier it was to sort of segregate music. So now it was like the soul station,
Yes.
the rock station, the classic rock station, the country station, the old country station.
Yeah.
Everything became segregated. So now kids could listen to their genre of music whenever they wanted to without being subjected to whatever is on the Billboard Top 40.
Right.
But like in your household, most of us learn music from the stuff that our parents listen to and the stuff that we hear on the radio.
Yeah.
And now it's even worse because with like Spotify and Pandora, and I love those apps, but it's way easier to not listen to anything but
absolutely.
the stuff that you like. So I feel like people's ear isn't as attuned to different genres of music as, say, my generation was, or even your generation was.
Because they don't have to be exposed to music anymore.
Nah.
Kids nowadays don't have to be exposed to music. Back in the day, you jump into the car, you got to listen to the whole song.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because nobody's going to change the dial. Or if they said that they're going to play Tupac, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm listening to I'm listening to Salt and Pepper until Tupac comes on. You know,
dude, you know how many hours my pops would spend forcing us to listen to James Brown and Sly and the Family Stone and Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons and the Beach Boys and the Beatles.
Yeah.
I heard all this stuff sitting in the car listening to my pops' music. So how else were you gonna get where else were you gonna get your music influences from? You get it from your family, you get it from the radio.
Right.
And then when you grow up, you get it from your friends.
right.
So that's that. So here we are at this country music station, and the guy interviews me, and I told him that like if we do this show, it has to be a show that's sort of reflective of the Bay Area. So it can't just be like us sitting here in a booth with cowboy boots and a cowboy hat on, screaming yeehaw all the time.
Yeah.
That's not the Bay. So if we do the show, it has to be a show that's reflective of the Bay Area, which means this has to be a diverse show. So it was me, the black dude, had a Jewish host, had this blonde, had a gay guy. I'm like, this is a cool lineup.
Right.
And if we had the opportunity to do the show the way we wanted to do, which he told us initially that we could, then I think it would have worked out and would have lasted a lot longer. But almost from the jump, he and I butted heads creatively. I felt like once we got in there, he tried to control what we did, which is his prerogative as the boss to do that. But we felt like there was a slight betrayal because that's not what you told us we'd be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and got into all these philosophical debates about country music versus hip hop, where he was like, I would tell him like, country music is just as rough and tumble as hip hop. If you listen to the lyrics and a bunch of these country songs, pretty violent.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of slapping people around.
They got songs about shooting as well. Yeah. Talk about guns left and right.
Man, I'm like, yeah, but just because you stick a bunch of banjos on it, it's more palatable to folks. So
a banjo make everything sound a little goofier, a little less offensive.
And we got into these debates all the time, and I finally got to the point where I was going, you know what? I don't know if I'm gonna make it here. And then, and so
I mean, at the time, were you striving? Was this like a big jump for you in your career? Did you feel like this is going to be something that's going to elevate you?
It was a big deal because not only was it my very first, like my show, myself and Gil, it was a show that I was kind of headlining with Gil.
Yeah.
But it was also going to be something that was so unique and different. I honestly thought that this thing had the potential to be syndicated if we had left it alone. Because it was so different. It was so unique. It debuted top 10 right away. The first couple of ratings books it blew out of the box. So we were really ecstatic about that because I think that was the first time a country morning show had done that in the Bay Area. But ultimately, it just came down to the fact that we just had so many creative differences. He was from Seattle, and he brought in. I remember there was a day where he brought myself and G into the office, and he had this big old file of all these bits he wanted to do. And he would pull these, he sat us down, and he just said, I want you guys to go through these, see which ones you like, see which ones you're gonna use. And we were like, we don't really wanna use none of these.
Yeah.
This is corny. This shit is all corny. Like this would fly maybe where you come from.
Right.
I don't want to be a dick about it, but the Bay Area, little more sophisticated audience, this kind of humor is not gonna fly. He had a bit where he wanted us to pop balloons on air with a clown, and he thought this was like literally when he was telling us this, this is gonna kill him. Oh, we're gonna give you some balloons.
And just sitting there looking at him like this man can't contain his own laughter.
It's insane. And I started going, this is probably not gonna work out.
Yeah, radio has a way of putting you in that position,
and it's a shame.
It's so true. Radio has a way of putting you in a position of doing stuff that you don't necessarily. You wouldn't suggest yourself.
100%. And I think the other problem with radio is that, God, I love the medium so much. So I don't want it to sound like I'm shitting on the industry, but I am kind of shitting on the industry. I feel like radio is in a position now more than ever, kind of hanging. It's seen as old school, and the audiences are getting older because the younger people have found other forms of audio entertainment.
Right.
And I think the primary reason is because radio is very slow to adapt to new technology and to the way that people consume their audio entertainment.
Yeah.
And I have been preaching for over a decade now about the need to have original content, about the need to keep your host live and local, about the need to do something with your websites other than have contests and pictures and videos that you aggregated from other places. Like, that's not where this is going. And I just feel like everybody ignored these warnings. And I was pitching original video content to Alice back in 2010.
Yeah.
And they were like, nah, nobody's gonna want to see that.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody wants to see that.
Everybody wants to see it. Now it's all
they
video
wanted
content.
to do. And so getting back to the country music station, so Gil and I got there, and I was just having this conflict with this guy on a regular basis. And I got to the point where I felt like, okay, this dude, we don't vibe. He doesn't kind of get where we're going here, what we want to do. And he and I had a couple of back and forths. And then one day I was like, you know what? I think I'm kind of done. So I just started printing out my resume, man.
Wow.
And
that's how you know you're ready to move on when you start like, I'm going back to the resume.
Get this. I printed out the resume one day and I left them on the printer.
Oh no.
And he's like, Marcus, what's this? I was like, man, I was just honest about it. I was like, listen, man, I don't know where this job is going, honestly.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like you don't really want me here. And you and I, we just kind of butt heads about things. I'm just being honest. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know how long you're going to want me here, et cetera, et cetera. And so he left it at that. And I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff, but fast forward to a few months later, he calls me into the office and said, your position is being eliminated.
Wow.
So as a co-host and executive producer, you're gone. And I was laid off.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, this was right when the economy went into the toilet. So when I got this gig, everything was going everything was going well.
It was like an 08.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything was good. I was going out with this chick at the time who I thought that was going to be something, so that was cool. I had a new car, I had a new townhouse. I was making real good money, and the kids were doing well.
Yeah.
Like, everything was going smooth, and I'm like, I'm doing big shit. And
it's always, for me, it's always funny how like when I look back on times in my life where shit has just like fallen apart.
Yeah.
It's always funny when you think about how well everything was going. And now at this point in my life, man, when things are going well, I get nervous.
Same thing.
I'm like, fuck, somebody's gonna pull the Jenga block out and this whole thing is gonna collapse.
Same thing.
That's
dude.
wild, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to feel that way, but that's what experience does to us. And so all those things were going real well. And then he called me in, he laid me off, and literally within months, everything else started falling apart. That relationship ended. I wasn't making that money that I was making at that station. So I lost, my car got repoed, and I had to have my family move in. I had my pops move in with me and my brother move in with me because I couldn't pay for the place anymore by myself. And it got so bad. Like, I was so broke. God, it was so dark. And I'm not the kind of person who really does, like, I'm not a millennial, I'm not a Gen Zer, et cetera. So I don't walk around wearing my heart on my sleeve like that. I don't feel the need to jump on social media. And that was also brand new at the time. To just get on there talking about, oh my, woe is me, life is so bad. It's just not my thing.
It's not in your nature.
And I wasn't made that way. So
you're not an emoji baby.
No, I'm not. Do love emojis though. But yeah, man.
Well, let me back it up just a little bit. So tell me about how, I see how you're losing your job could affect the money and your financial status. That's understandable. Anybody who's been in radio long enough totally understands that. But why did your relationship fall apart with this girl that you were so happy to be with? I mean, was it tied into you losing your job?
Oh, that was definitely part of it. I think that this is a person who was definitely focused on how much money somebody made, et cetera, et cetera.
That hurts.
Good person, good human being, but there are just some people who, like, that's one of their priorities in life.
Well, so, for a lot of people, men and women, even though I would say that a lot of times it leans more to the female side. For a lot of people, that is like a requirement. Like, if you don't have a good job, and if you're not making money, and if you're not progressing on an economic level, then that's an indication of, like, you're not reliable, or you're not somebody that I can build or grow with. So it hurts, because sometimes we identify with our job so much, and then when it's stripped away from us, we feel like something like is being stripped away from inside of us, a part of us. It's unfortunate that we come to that point, and it's really unfortunate that this woman had to go that route,
Well, listen. The most disappointing thing about that particular thing is that I don't like, if that's who people are, fine, whatever. You need to have somebody who's paid, men, women, whoever. If you just need somebody who's making money, if that's one of your particular needs, if that's one of your deal breakers, fine. The thing that bothered me about that particular issue was, even though she seemed to be supportive, it would come up every now and then, and you would go, damn, dude, I would hope you'd have my back.
Right.
And you just realize certain things. And there were other things too, but I know that was one of the main issues at the time, because from her perspective is, oh my God, you're broke now. Where are you going to be in the next 5 years?
Right.
And there are some people who go through life, and this is also one of the things that you learn, there are just people who go through life who can't seem to separate themselves from the now and judge everything that's going on now as what the future is going to be. Yeah. So if you are broke right now, obviously you're going to be broke for the rest of your life. And that's not necessarily the case. Yeah. And fine, whatever. But that was at that point, that part of it was so insignificant to me. Yeah. Because there were so many other things that were going wrong and falling apart. Not only was my identity, I tied into that job, into being a radio dude, but being in a position where now I have to have my pops come live with me and my brother come live with me to help me pay for this place. And I don't have a car anymore, so now I got to go out and find just a little hoopty just to get from point A to point B. And this thing is not very reliable.
What does it feel like to see a tow truck pull up and take your vehicle? Because we all have images. You've seen these shows, right, P? Where somebody pulls up with the tow. They got a fucking TV show that they made out of it.
Let me tell you something. Here's what it's like. Here's what it's like to not see the tow truck pull up and just come out to get your car and go, oh, somebody stole my car.
Oh no!
And then you find out, oh no, we just took this back.
How'd you find out? Like, you called the police and put in a report?
I called the cops, dude. Hey man, somebody stole my car.
What kind of car was it?
It was a Volkswagen Jetta.
Oh, those motherfuckers are easy to pick up too. They're small.
Nice. Oh, it was so sweet.
Yeah, those are nice cars.
I don't know. It was weird. I went through a weird Jetta phase. Mainly because this is so stupid. I remember when I was younger, dudes who had Jettas always seem to have a bunch of girls.
Yeah, I know, right? It's something, I think it's just like the Volkswagen itself. It has like, you think of the Bug, but then there is something about the Jetta that is just kind of like, all right, that's a different type of dude right there. He's a different dude. You know, he's not the basic dude.
Every one of these, and they wouldn't like thugged out or whatever. You can't be thugged out in a Jetta.
Hell nah.
And so it felt to me like, this is a grown-up vehicle.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get why these chicks like these dudes. So I said, I'm going to get me a Jetta too. And so I came out there and the Jetta was gone. I'm like, oh man, I don't have a car. I don't have a place now. It got to the point where there were definitely a few days where I had to sleep in my car because I didn't have money. Oh, it was just bad, dude. I even got to the point where I had to get a temporary job and I had to just kind of give up on radio. And I could even go into some of that stuff because one of the things you learn quickly when the chips are down, people talk about this all the time, is who's got your back, who your real friends are, who do people really care about you,
Absolutely.
et cetera. And you learn really quickly. And again, this is one of those things that we all know inherently, but sometimes we need to be slapped in the face with a big dose of that reality in order to drive that point home.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I mean, none of my so-called radio friends was like really there to try to help me out, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there were folks like Sarah and Vinny and them. That's my radio home. Those folks always had my back no matter what happened. But, you know, there's still other people around there who you're like, dude, you know,
you expected to have your back. Yeah.
And I'm not one of these people who's like counting favors because I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if I do something for you, I'm doing it because I want to do it for you. You don't owe me anything. That being said, I feel like if we are friends and you are in a position where you could help me out, if you're in a room with a bunch of execs or PDs or something pops up at your place, and you should be thinking, you know what? I bet you Marcus would be cool for that.
Absolutely.
And just hook me up. Just make
you know,
connection.
it's funny because I feel like that does happen in the radio world, and that's why you see a lot of people in radio that kind of go through like a revolving door. You know, you see some people here at one station. I mean, we were just talking about this earlier, how like we've touched so many different stations, different genres, because your name does continue to just float around those rooms.
Yep.
So you know it's possible.
Oh,
you know
I know it's possible.
I know
it happens all the time.
Yeah. So I can imagine how disappointing it is to start realizing like, damn, nobody's helping me out right now.
Yeah. Nobody was like, wow, okay, I see how this is. So that kind of drove that point home. So all those things kind of disappointed me, and I was really in this like deep ass spiral of, I guess in hindsight it was depression. But again, you know, I'm also come from a generation of guys who like, fuck it, I'm just gonna man up, and get through it, et cetera, et cetera. But that stuff eats away at your soul, especially when you're trying to go through it by yourself. You're not really talking about it with anybody. You don't want to deal with it with anybody.
So what was it like when you moved your dad and your brother in? I mean, because I know that's got to be a little, you know, if you're telling them, hey, I need you guys to come and help me out because I can't afford to pay the rent or I can't afford to take care of all the bills.
Yep.
I mean, did they understand? Like, was that like a situation where your brother and your dad were like, okay, no, we got you? Or
Dude, they were like, oh, this place is cool. Yeah, we in.
Yeah, we in. Okay.
That was not a problem
like,
at all.
This is an upgrade.
Oh, no, this is cool. We here. We got you. No, and plus fam is always cool.
Of course.
But even then, you don't really tell everybody the entire picture.
Right.
I wish that I knew then, or I understood life then the way I have a better grasp of things now. In hindsight, I probably would have been better off if I'd gone to therapy, if I'd been more open to people about what I was dealing with from an emotional perspective. But that's just not the way things were. On the other hand, I am glad to have gone through it. And for many reasons, I'm glad I kept my mouth shut about some of that stuff because I learned a lot about people and I learned a lot about myself. And it gave me a lot of time to think about who I am, what I wanted out of life, what's important to me. And so I slowly kind of rebuilt this thing up. It got to the point, dude, I was so broke that I would only have enough money to go one direction on public transportation.
Yeah.
And I got this temporary job in San Francisco at this law firm. It's a very right-wing law firm too.
Okay.
Which already put me in the back.
Like right up your alley?
This is going to be interesting. That being said, the people that I worked with, us folks on the low end of the totem pole, kicked it.
Yeah.
But I knew that I got enough money to go. I got 5 trips in this money.
Yeah.
So I would get up in the morning. I would have to be to work at 7. So I would get up at about 3:30, and then I would walk about 4 miles to a carpool just so I can get in the carpool and not have to pay any money.
Wow.
And cross the bridge. Because back then, carpool was free.
Yeah, yeah.
So I walked 4 miles just so I didn't have to pay that money, get in there, get in the car, go to work, and then pay my little $2, $3 to get home the other way. So this was like really dark, really rough. I wasn't telling anybody about this stuff. I wasn't talking about it very much.
Now, why do you think, I can imagine why you don't talk about this type of stuff. I mean, a lot of us, especially men, we're very prideful and we don't want to talk about, our failures. But I mean, was it that though? Was it just like the pride and you didn't want to show, the world that you were struggling?
Well, it was that part. It's twofold. The pride part, the ego part, but also the other part was feeling like, God, I don't want to burden nobody with this.
Yeah.
And everybody else got their own stuff.
Yeah.
So why would I, bring my family down with all these things that I really feel with my stuff? They got their own stuff.
Yeah.
Why would I go in? I think the only person who knew what I was going through was my best friend at the time.
Yeah.
He was really the only person who knew how deep it was. He had my back, of course. But it was really, really hard. And I got that temp job. And from there, I sort of started to rebuild things a little bit at a time. But I'll tell you, and I had another incident that occurred probably about 3 years later where I started this this business. And kind of the same thing happened. Lost it all. But again, I want to say the stress, the importance of these things that I went through was that it really forced me to put into perspective what really matters to me, what's really important. Because I realized a lot of the stuff I was doing was just because of outside influences.
Right.
I wanted to have, don't get me wrong, I love radio, I love pop culture. I love to write. I consider myself a writer because that's what I went to school for. I started as a writer. I just ended up in broadcasting.
Yeah.
But I realized a lot of the motivation for me was the fact that I felt like I needed to have a bunch of money in order to be and feel like top dog, feel successful.
The money is an indication of your success,
It's an indication of everything, Rudy. Yeah. It's an indication of your success. It's an indication of your importance. Mm-hmm. In many cases, it's an indication of your intelligence.
Right.
That's what society I would say that's what our society would have you say.
Yeah.
Would have you believe. And so it took me a while to come to the conclusion that was the first bout of that. And the second time it happened again in 2013, I realized this is not even really that important to me. Like, why am I fucking busting my ass and getting all butthurt over these things, trying to accomplish things that in the long run aren't even really that important to me.
Right.
Like
right.
I don't. People think I'm crazy when I say this. I don't really care about money.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
What things did you consider important back then?
Oh,
that you can look at now today and be like, yeah, I don't. I've done a complete 180 when it comes to that.
That was it.
To that idea.
It's the concept that I had to be rich.
Yeah.
The concept that I had to make more money than most people. Not because I love money, but because I love the idea of having it to flex it and show that I got this and I got that. Because from a very small age, particularly in our society, we are told that money is everything.
Right.
Why do athletes want to have the most money? Because it tells you how important you are.
Yeah. Look how good I am. I have the biggest contract.
I mean, there's a story, and I can't remember who it was, but there's a story years ago about an athlete who made, I'll use a random number, $5 million a year. And then somebody else came up who was relatively close in talent and accomplishment. They said I had to have $5,001 because I want to make more than that person.
Wow.
Like, I feel like that's kind of a sick way to live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's some things that not only can you not quantify, but you shouldn't even try to quantify them. Yeah. Like happiness, like success, creativity or interest in something. Yeah. I mean, some things they don't need to be charted.
Yeah.
And you're right. People try to use money as a way to signify, okay, look how important I am, look how capable I am. I must be good. Celebrate me, love me, exalt me because I'm the shit. Because I make $5,001.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm now the top payer. And I'm like, I just got to the point where that's not as important to me. And then when I started that business and That business folded, and I knew that was such a great idea.
What kind of business was it?
That's when I launched the app.
Oh, the app. That's right. Yeah.
And I launched the app, and the app was amazing. And in hindsight, that app was a little bit ahead of its time.
Right. Tell people, for the people who don't know what app is, tell people what it was.
Essentially, it was one of the very first podcast network, essentially. So we had all these original shows created for this app, and it was Breathe Radio, and it was talk radio for women.
Yeah.
And I always build it as, the answer to Bravo. Like if Bravo was a radio station, it would be this.
Right.
And so we had shows that sort of targeted women, and we just didn't have enough money to keep it going. And so that thing flatlined. We busted our ass on it for a couple of years, and we had really good numbers. We got to the point where my show, the show that I hosted, the Straight Male Friend Show, which I had built initially from a bit on one of the morning shows. I was on the Renell in the Morning Show.
Yeah.
And we did this bit with my guy Reza. It was called Dr. Feelgood. And we just had a regular guy giving women advice about love and sex and dating and relationships. I love this. And then I ended up on this ABC reality show. It was called How to Get the Guy. Okay. And this was 2006, towards the end of 2006. And so they approached me, the producer of this show approached me, and they were like, hey, would you be interested in applying to be one of the bachelors on this show? Because the show is about these 4 30-something women in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Professional women. They had everything in life except for they couldn't find Mr. Right.
Except for love.
That's right. And so the producers approached me about this thing, and they wanted me to apply for it. And so I spoke to my host at the time, and she was like, nah, I don't want no cameras up in here at 5:30 in the morning looking at me, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, okay. So that was part of the deal. They'd have to follow you around.
They follow you around. And I said, okay, cool. I guess I can't do it. So I spoke to these guys. I can't do it. This is why. They came back to me a couple of weeks later and said, listen, we have this idea where we want to have you and a couple of other guys just on a panel, and you're just going to answer questions about love and sex and dating and relationships from these women. Okay. So I went in there, and they had this set built up like a bar. It looked like a bar, but it was a set. So it was myself and 3 other guys. And we were on this panel. They had us at this bar, and they took this fishbowl, and they had the women write down questions. Mm-hmm. The women could write down any question they ever had about love, sex, dating, relationships, etc. Whatever question you ever had for guys, write it down, put it in the fishbowl. The guys would pull it out, and they would answer the question.
Okay, I like that.
I loved it.
Yeah,
loved it. And so we did this thing, and guys, by the way, if you give women the opportunity to ask any question, they will definitely ask any question. I think the very first question we pulled out was, "What's the deal with anal?" And so,
the women were. It's like basically they're anonymous, though, right? Because
they weren't anonymous.
But it goes in the fishbowl.
Yes.
And you don't know who asked the question.
You don't know who asked.
Okay,
but you end up figuring out who asked it because they would always ask a follow up when the guys asked the question.
It's like when the lady who perked up for the anal question, that was the one. She was clearly the one who asked the anal question.
Yeah, man. I just loved it so much. So once I was out at the country station, I went back and I started this blog.
Yeah.
It was called Your Straight Male Friend. Every woman should have at least one. Started that blog. That blog became kind of popular. So my boy Matty, who was at Stitcher at the time, Stitcher Radio, I went over there and we launched it as a podcast.
Yes.
The podcast started to take off. We turned the podcast into this internet radio station. And then from that, we syndicated it.
Yeah.
And so the show ended up being syndicated on weekends in 13 markets.
Okay.
And then we got picked up by Sirius XM on Hot Talk.
Yeah.
And that did really well. And the show was just blowing up. I'm like, oh, this is fucking great. Then we decided to push the boundaries more. So we built this website dedicated to the Straight Male Friend Show, et cetera. Had the Facebook page, all this stuff. We got to the point where I was like, you know what? I feel like we should do this even bigger. And that's when I launched the Breathe Radio app.
The app, yeah.
Yeah, and so that which was
ahead of its time in a lot of ways, yeah. Because now you see that all the time.
Everywhere.
And you had the idea just too soon. Isn't that terrible? Like the idea too soon?
Because and I'm telling you, Rudy, we had gotten to the point where the show was doing so well and so many people were downloading the app, we would go to restaurants and people would recognize our voices and say, aren't you such and such from the Straight Male Friend Show?
Right.
I love that show. So we knew that it was doing well.
Right.
But we just couldn't sustain it. There was no money because at the time, nobody was paying money for podcasts and sponsorship on podcasts. We had set up a couple of deals with, we set up a deal with the Hard Rock Cafe where we do the show live around the country at several Hard Rock cafes. We were doing well, but we just ran out of money.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get the sponsor dollar. And then literally, right after that thing folded, within a year, podcasts started blowing up everywhere.
Right. Yeah. And then boom. And now it's like podcast culture.
Insane.
So let me go back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier. And I never really considered this as a part of your journey. When you mentioned depression, you mentioned that you felt like you may have been depressed.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look back on that now, do you feel like you were depressed and you were just kind of like denying it back then?
100%, dude.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you think about the fact that I had my entire existence, my entire being, my core was this thing I had gotten into, and I'd pursued it all these years, and I'd gotten to this point where I really was like ready to roll with it big, and my entire identity was tied into it.
Yeah.
And especially when you, as a comic, it's part of your identity, and it would be really weird if somebody one day took that away from you and said, you're not allowed to do this again.
Right.
And people would stop me on the street and say, aren't you Marcus Osborne? And why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? Like, damn, it's like a constant, like you love that people recognize you because that feels good. That means your work kind of resonated somehow. But it's also like a reminder every couple of days, you suck, you failed, you're not on my radio every day anymore. I can't read your website anymore. I can't read the stuff you wrote. I can't listen to your podcast anymore. I can't listen to your radio show anymore. It's a constant reminder, basically saying you failed, you suck.
Yeah, and that takes a toll over time.
It does,
and then especially when you start, because you never lose your friends in the industry. Like you still know people in the industry, and you're watching them do this stuff, and you're just kind of on the sideline, like fuck, like that should be me. Yeah, I should be right there.
I mean, and I know you do this. Like if you see a comic on stage, and you go, God, I can't believe this person. This person?
Yeah.
This person.
You're like, wow, this is the guy, huh? This one. Okay.
You wouldn't believe how many times I listen to the radio, and I'm sorry if this offends anybody, but there's some folks I listen to on the radio, I'm going, there is not a chance in hell you got that job because you're great at it.
Right.
You got, somebody knew you and plugged you up real good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that really bugs me. And listen, I'm not against affirmative action.
Yeah.
And there is no greater affirmative action than, oh, that's my homie, I'm gonna hook him up. Cool.
That's real.
Cool. But I'm like, damn, some of the folks that I know were in really good position to just say, I'm not saying give me anything. I just want to get an interview.
Yeah.
I want to have a conversation with somebody. And you realize that, boy, when you're not there, nobody's thinking about you. And I'm not knocking that either. I just feel like the people who are your friends in the industry or whatever industry you're in, just like, you know what? Talk to Marcus.
Right.
And I've been lucky enough, I've had a few people do that. But still, it's still like at that time, it doesn't bother me nearly as much now as it bugged me then because I was really riding high then.
Yeah.
And like all those things, you were, damn, was everybody just being fake with me?
Yeah, you start wondering.
Yeah, are y'all just fake? Can I not trust anybody anymore? Was I, am I not really as good as I thought I was, et cetera,
The whole imposter syndrome starts to set in. Yeah. So you lost your car, lost your job, you lost your girl. I mean, this was like a tough time.
Yeah.
A stretch of time where it was just like things were just kind of the world was just being depleted around you, right? What did you have to do mentally to start pulling yourself out of there and start realizing, okay, like life doesn't stop right here. Life has to go on.
Yeah, man. The toughest thing about going through stuff like that by yourself is that you spend so much time thinking about how everything sucks. So you don't get to have that with anybody. And you stay in that position until something comes along, sort of distracts you. It takes you out of those thoughts. For me, for better or worse, it was getting that temp job at that law firm, because then I was able to turn my focus to being productive and working. And I was there probably 3 months. And then they said, hey, we want you to come on and be full-time with us. So that was cool. And it kind of, once you start working again, you're bringing in money again, it kind of rebuilds your self-esteem. And then you start thinking, I don't know who that motherfucker was. I'm the shit.
Right. No, it really is incredible how, like, if you just get stuck thinking about and focusing on one thing, like on all the negatives, it's incredible. You become that. You almost literally become all this negative shit that you think about. You do have to be productive. You do have to be active. Like the best thing to do is to always be in motion. You know, because motion is medicine.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you get stuck in a certain state of mind, and you just let yourself rot away, then it takes over not just your mind, but it takes over your body, your spirit, everything. You got to figure out a way, something to put you back in motion, because motion is what's gonna help you grow and like move you out of that space. Yeah, that's a tough headspace to be in.
And I also feel like I was lucky because I'm a generally a happy person.
Yeah.
I'm generally pretty positive about life. I feel like things are always going to work out. So I think if I had been a person more susceptible to depression at the time and to the depths that it can take you, it probably could have been a lot worse. I am generally a happy person with a pretty positive disposition. I feel like everything is always going to work out somehow, some way. So that was kind of my mantra. Like, I'm going to get through this. This is going to be cool. Not everybody has that naturally.
Right.
And the scary part is when I think about the folks who don't have that naturally and they keep everything to themselves like I was doing, of course you're going to spiral out.
Yeah.
Like, of course you're going to think the worst thoughts. Of course you're going to wonder, like, why am I here? What is my purpose on this planet? Like, I completely get how people would feel like, there's no point in me being here. I still talk to people like that now who are like, there's no point in me being here. And I understand why and how they get to that point. It's not for me. It never was me. But I get it, dude. Yeah. I completely get it.
I mean, what do you say to somebody who's in that position right now where they feel like everything is just falling apart?
And that's the thing. One of the mistakes we all make is thinking that we can just talk somebody into feeling better.
Yeah. Just be happy.
Yeah. That's
Come
bullshit.
on, stop thinking about it.
It's bullshit.
It's like
when somebody says to you, "Hey man, smile."
Right.
You got shit going on in your life. You don't feel like smiling.
Yeah.
And like if somebody,
bitch, my Jetta just got repossessed.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends who I just learned that when people are going through stuff, I think one of the worst things you can say to, "Hey man, it's gonna be all right."
Right. It's so condescending sometimes, right?
It's gonna be all right.
At least it feels like it. They could be so sincere about it. It's like you lay out your heart, you tell everybody, you know, how fucked up your life is or what's going on that's really like killing you on the inside. And then it's just kind of like, well, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
You're going to be all right. Want to go hoop?
Yeah. Right. I would rather have somebody be like, damn, that's fucked up.
That's what they want to hear. That's what they want to hear. And that's what I would have wanted to hear. Like, damn, Marcus, that's shitty, dude. Yeah. Like, yeah, it is shitty. And so I try to just, you know, more than anything, I feel like I just try to be a sounding board for folks.
Yeah.
And just try to be able to listen.
That really is the best thing.
Stuff. And I feel like that's where my strength lies in terms of communication, just kind of listen to folks. You want to bare your soul, and let's have it. Let's have that conversation talk. Because folks don't want to hear your Pollyanna bullshit when they're going through something.
Your cliche, you know.
What do people say when somebody dies? They're in a better place now. No, they are not in a fucking better place now.
But deep down inside, you're like, but what about me though? Like I'm suffering right now. Like you're making me want to be with them.
Yeah. I feel like that stuff is just really reductive. Like that you're minimizing these people's emotions. You're not validating the way they feel. They feel like the world is collapsing around them. Explore that. Talk about all the reasons that they feel that way, as opposed to trying to, you know, shine up a piece of shit. Like, no, it's not good right now. Let's not pretend it is.
I mean, perspective is a powerful thing, but there are some things where just changing your perspective is not going to help. At all. You know what I mean? like, you know, getting your car repoed or losing your job or losing your relationship. It's like, okay, I'll get to the perspective part. Just let me fucking feel like shit for a little bit.
That's right.
Like let me be broken, and then I'll get to the perspective part eventually. But I'm gonna need some time though.
Those are real, tangible things that have real, tangible, emotional consequences. Yeah. And like, you know, the things that I've learned from that experience and with Breathe going under is that I'm at a place in life now where I don't feel like there's not a whole lot that's gonna really get to me anymore.
There we go.
Because I think once you go through stuff, and this is where the perspective part comes in, once you've gone through things that are really hurtful or really troubling or really just kind of bring you down, you kind of understand like nothing's really the end of the world.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that we get upset about, they have solutions.
Exactly.
And since you know they have solutions, there's no real reason to get too down about it because you can solve it. Or the other side is they don't have solutions, which means there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So you may as well just keep it moving.
That's so true, man.
You may as well just keep it moving.
And that's the perspective that eventually people will come to learn that.
Yeah.
You just got to give them some time. And that's the whole point of this podcast, the acronym behind Tragic: time renders all great, injustice comical. Yeah. In other words, you give something fucked up enough time and you sit there and you just kind of like, continue to live your life, continue to do what you have to do. But that one terrible time or that one terrible thing that happened, you'll eventually be able to look back on it and smile at it and laugh at it because you learned from it, you grew from it. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point, is that you can't allow your current circumstances to dictate what the rest of your life is gonna be. That's not the way it works. And we do that so often with ourselves.
And hopefully we can get to the point where, at least I have, I've gotten to the point where I can look back on a few of those circumstances and go, gosh, you know what? As sucky as that was, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I hadn't gone through that. Like where I am now, I'm in a great place. I got a really cool gig, man. And I wouldn't have been able to do this gig if I hadn't been able to do this gig that I got at the Punchline.
Right.
And I wouldn't have had that gig at the Punchline if I hadn't gone through the stuff that I went through with Breathe. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all connected.
You get put in a position where you have to do things and you sink or swim. And I love the time that I had at the Punchline. God, it was one of my favorite gigs of all time.
Yeah, working at the world famous
Punchline
in San Francisco.
Man. It was so cool. I made so many friends.
Yeah. I
love stand-up comedy, so this ended up being a perfect gig for me. So now you, amongst so many other comics who I'm now cool with, some of the headliners around the country, I love it. I love comics, where I developed my love for comedians. I actually told you this earlier. I think comedians are my favorite human beings to have conversations with because they have a perspective on life that they're willing to share, and they're really raw, and they're really open in a way that the average person isn't. So all this stuff came from that experience with comedians, with that 2007 experience, and the thing with Breathe pushed me in the position where I had to be at the Punchline, which put me in a place where I could talk to people like you and all these other folks. It all works out the way it's supposed to work out. I think that I was lucky enough to stay positive about it.
Yes.
And I did end up with like a really cool support system, like my wife and a bunch of other friends. Like you, like I said, you find out who the real ones are real fast. You find out real fast. I know you've had some stuff like this too.
I mean, I've been, they say you're not in radio until you get fired. When I got fired from KMBR, I was just sitting there like, what the fuck? Like, what did I do wrong? They're taking my key card. They're walking me to my car. I'm like, what the fuck? Am I like a threat right now? Like, are these motherfuckers scared of me? Like, why are they walking me to my car? And it all happens so fast, and like you mentioned earlier, you identify with the job and you start thinking to yourself like, yeah, people know who I am. They hear my voice on the radio. This is so cool. Like, and all of a sudden, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then you just feel empty. You feel like there's a void, and you're trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do to fill it up,
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
If you weren't allowed to do comedy again, you'd be in the same position.
Exactly.
Like, what am I going to do?
If I didn't have everybody has their avenues, their channels that they use to express themselves or to fulfill themselves. For me, it's been stand-up comedy for over the last, decade plus, and if I didn't have it, you're right. If I didn't have it, I don't know what I would do in terms of creativity because I've become so deeply tied to that. And that's a way for me to express myself. If it was just taken away from me, I mean, I might turn into a fucking psychopath, because it's like you need that. You need to find something,
Yes, sir.
Or I might just start another podcast. I don't know.
Podcasts are a great outlet, though.
They are, and that's part of the reason why they become so popular. Because the one thing I love about the podcast world is that it's reiterated to people something that we already knew, but we didn't articulate enough, and that is we enjoy each other's company. We enjoy talking to each other.
Sir.
We enjoy listening to what people, to the insightful things that people have to say. We enjoy learning from other people's experiences. And podcasting has reintroduced that whole notion to a society that, a time in humanity where it's like motherfuckers just gave up on each other already.
Yeah, dude, this is, I wish this was a conversation that radio was having with itself because I think they'd be in a better position. Whatever's going on with KGO, I was like, I could have gone over there and programmed KGO.
Right.
I could tell you exactly what they need to be doing to get that thing rolling. It is conversation. Like people talk about, folks don't want to hear. When I was at one station, I had a PD come in and say to me, you know what? we're going to have the jocks talk for 10 seconds max.
Yeah.
Because research shows that people don't want to hear what the DJs have to say. Well, then really, tell that to Howard Stern.
Right.
Tell that to Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
People want to hear what you have to say if you're actually saying some shit.
Yeah.
If you're just opening up the mic and talking about there's a contest today, or we're giving away this, or it's just a live read, nobody want to hear that shit.
Nobody want to hear that shit, man.
But if you're having a conversation about something that's interesting to people, why do you think people listen to Joe Rogan?
Absolutely.
People love talk shows.
Absolutely.
A station like KGO for years was dominant in the talk show circuit. It was the #1 station for almost 30 years running. Mm-hmm. And they've just kind of gotten away from the way, because I think the thing that was great about KGO is they knew how to reach people. I think that many stations, KGO and even the music stations, they don't really understand how audiences consume their audio content now.
Yeah.
Let these jocks get on there and say some stuff, because you know why? The music that you stations are playing, guess what? They got it on their Spotify already.
With the curse words.
With the curse words. Real talk.
I don't have to hear Tupac
Let
skip
these
every other
dudes
word.
talk, man. Let them talk.
Let me ask you this question. So if you could sum up, describe yourself during that rough patch in your life where you lost your job and things were not going well. Describe yourself during that time, and then describe yourself after that time.
If I was describe myself during that time, fake, really fake, because I smiled to everybody, and there was like this internal. I'm such a competitive dude.
Yeah.
And I'm driven. And to be in a position where nothing is going right, no matter how much I feel like I can affect things, that's false, all of it. The way I responded was fake. The way I presented myself to people was fake. I smiled all the time. The belief that I had that I actually had some control over all those things that happened to me, all fake, all false. Now I think I'm a much more real person, much more authentic outwardly and internally.
Where it really matters.
I just feel like, and this is what I was telling you earlier, like, I realize that none of this stuff is really as important to me as I thought it was.
Yeah.
When I move away, there's a reason I'm going to move away. I'm going to move away because as much as I love being in the Bay Area, this is an amazing place to live, but is it healthy for people? I'm not certain. Like, if you live here, you have to make X amount of dollars, and that in and of itself pushes you to be in a place where you're constantly fighting to make money, and you're constantly you're driven to have to make XYZ amount of dollars. And I'm just kind of past the point where I want a simpler existence. I want to get away from the rat race. I'm not interested in being the next tech billionaire. I'm interested in being able to go to work every day, doing something that I enjoy and love, whether it's writing, whether it's doing another talk show, whether it's hosting another show at all, whether it's launching a podcast, whether it's launching a business, whatever it is I do, that's the enjoyment of doing that is going to be paramount. It's going to be first and foremost. I want to work with people whose company I enjoy. I want to be able to take that job, and then once I'm done with that job, I want to go home. I want to hang out with my family. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to watch some TV. I want to listen to some music, or go to a live show, or watch stand-up comedy, and just chill. Like, I don't want the stress of trying to compete with other people and what they're doing anymore.
And in the Bay Area, you can do all that, but you'll have like 19 roommates.
That's right.
That's gotta live with like 27 other people.
100%. Like, how many 50-year-old dudes you know with 17 roommates?
Hey, bro, 50 years old with 4 roommates, bro. That ain't sexy no more. There's not gonna be too many one night stands in that house. I promise you that.
But I think, guys, people have to be real about that too.
Yeah.
You got to get past all of the falsehoods that you see everywhere. We can all be rich.
Yeah.
We can all have things. You can all flex.
Yeah.
All the material things. So find some internal peace, which I feel like I've found now. Find some internal drive, which I've always had. And then now I just want to focus on doing the things that I really enjoy. I want to focus on working with people with whom I enjoy working, and take it from there.
Absolutely. The end of the show, I always like to do something called, the final word. This is your chance to give anybody who's listening whatever message is on your mind.
Oh, man.
The floor is yours. Go ahead and share whatever message you have in your heart, on your mind. It could be about the story that you told or anything else. The floor is yours, man.
I just think that it's kind of a theme for the entire day is find a place in life, find out what it actually is in life that makes you 100% happy and fulfilled. If being an entrepreneur, if the action of chasing that next big thing, that next big app, if that's the thing that makes you happy and gives you fulfillment, and you don't mind the ups and downs that comes with that, you don't mind the ebbs and flows, the losses, the failures that inevitably come with that sort of life, you should do that type of thing. If it's important for you to find satisfaction in life in the smaller things, the minutia, the granular things in life where I just want to hang out with my mom or I want to hang out with my kids, I don't need to be rich. I just want to make enough money where I can eat and go to the movies every now and then and smoke some weed or whatever you got to do, whatever it is. Whatever it is you do with your life at this point, particularly the older you get, find out what it is, focus on that, and don't let the world distract you from the things that actually make you happy, because I think all of us end up going through that at some point. We get distracted by the shiny things that we see on social media. And that becomes a keep up with the Joneses type of thing. That becomes, oh, such and such is doing that. Why aren't we doing that? Such and such is taking a trip to such and such place. Why aren't we doing that? It's all false. Just stick within yourself, man. I hate sounding corny, but it's one of the things you really do learn. Like
happiness is corny.
You're right.
But it's happiness, though.
You're happy. Like, I can't tell you how many people there. When I go down south, where a lot of my family is, in New Orleans, is my favorite place in the country, and this is also making so many trips to New Orleans has really helped affect my worldview. Is you go down there, and as great a place as New Orleans is, the people there are not rolling in money. They're not rich, but goddamn, they are happy as hell. I go to a bar. These people don't have amazing homes and all that stuff, but they sure do enjoy their families and their friends and sitting there hanging out and drinking. Yeah. And nobody's ever sitting around talking about, hey, what do you do for a living?
Right.
What school did you go to? Like,
right.
We are very snobby. I know the Bay Area doesn't like to admit this. It's fucking snobby ass part of the world. Yeah. It's really snobby.
The Bay Area is very happy that LA is pretty close because we can blame it on them. We can project our snobbiness onto LA.
And let me tell you something, Rudy. I like LA, and I readily admit that I enjoy LA, and there is some snobbery to LA, but San Franciscans who say that LA is snobby and San Francisco's not, you're insane.
Yeah.
Because yes, LA is snobby in terms of the way they look and they like things, but there is the intellectual snobbery of San Francisco that drives you insane.
Yeah.
So where in LA is like, what do you drive? What do you wear? That type of thing. What TV shows are you watching? Here,
what do you know? What do you believe in?
What books do you read?
Right.
What university did you attend?
Yeah.
All that stuff. I always tell folks, listen, I would much rather hang out with people who think they look better than me than people who think they're smarter than me.
Nice.
So I'm gonna kick it in LA where we can have a good time and people are pretty and look cool and we can not think about all this stuff, as opposed to being here and you always think, Marcus is stupid. He reads People magazine. What a fucking low life.
I'd rather be surrounded by fake titties than fake intellect. Than fake people. Hey, Marcus Osborne, this has been a great conversation, bro. I appreciate you coming through and hanging out for a little while, man. My man right here. This has been episode 6 of the Tragic Podcast. Thank you to all the subscribers that are out there checking us out right now, and the future ones as well. We're up to 60, P. Woo-hoo. We're gonna hit 100 very soon. Thank you again, Marcus. Course, ladies and gentlemen, good night and good luck.
Smile, pick up your head. It's alright, it's gonna be okay. I know times have been so rough.